And you knew right there, like, this is, Ellie's not going to let this fly. This evil bitch, like, who the fuck? But as it's happening, it's already going through my head. I'm like, oh, God, all right, you know, she knew somebody in that, she knew somebody in that hospital. I hate the bright lights. Yeah, don't, anybody wants to say anything about it. I'm not pretentious. I just don't like bright lights. I like it to be dim when I'm mixing and editing, so when it comes to recording, sometimes I have these on if I have to have the lights bright. For the last few weeks now, my son and I have been playing through The Last of Us Part 2. We played through the first one together years ago, and I've never had so much fun in my life watching someone else play a video game. I literally watched them play the entire game. We were going to switch back and forth a few weeks ago when we started this, but I loved the first game so much. I played the first game, and I didn't think the gameplay was that great, but I loved the zombies. I loved the entire concept of it. I loved the characters. The story was just phenomenal. It was bordering on a choose-your-own-adventure movie. Anyone out there who's 45 years older, maybe a bit younger, would know Choose-Your-Own-Adventure, the books, the novels from back in the day. That's another video, another story. So The Last of Us, Part 2. I knew it had come out, but it's so long between releases that Naughty Dog, the production company, I've forgotten all about it. So obviously for big fans of the game out there, I'm obviously way behind the time because the game's been out for a while. So suffice to say, watching someone that good play the game, for a lot of the game, absolutely indistinguishable from a movie. In fact, there was many times over the last week I told him about this that I'd caught myself thinking about what was that movie. I was in my head and I was looking at this actor and I'm like, oh my God, why can't I remember that actor's name, or what was that movie? And then I realized, oh my God, it was The Last of Us Part 2. I was thinking about the video game and I thought my brain was tricking me into thinking it was a movie. Game's been out for what, like 4 or 5 years? Do we really have to go spoiler free? Who's played this game? Like, if you're one of my subscribers, are you a video game guy or girl? That's as far as I'm going to go with that, by the way. Because I am sporadically. I'll find a game and I'll just play the hell out of it until I'm absolutely bored with it. There's a lot of haters. The hard right haters. Everybody knows who they are. I don't have to name their channels. There's going to be the liberals who love it. Well, there's going to be the woke left. They're not going to love it for the game. Not for the most part. They're going to love it for its diversity and its inclusion. Which is fine. As long as it's not forced. There's a lot of kind of sexual diversity and racial diversity in the game, but it all works. It all works. Feels real. Feels natural. Feels like a real story. Doesn't feel like anything's really shoehorned in there to make a statement. As far as every time I turn on YouTube and look up The Last of Us 2, all I see is hate. I just see just people shitting all over it, and unless they're from really official sources, and usually I don't follow the mainstream. Usually I'm on board, and if something's woke, I'll call it out.
Gen Z and their trauma bragging. Can't you just stuff it down, turn it into accomplishment or cancer like the rest of us?
So many reasons it's the best game of all time. Wonder if YouTube will let me smoke. Should probably ask them. But I've never played a video game that checks all the boxes. Direction, writing, they spared no expense. This, if this is what you get when you spend 7 or 8 years making one game, sign me up. I've seen the interviews with the cast, not the show, the game. The protagonist is obviously Elli. Elli is a girlfriend in the show who kind of annoys me. Not because of the lesbian thing. I just don't like her girlfriend's character. I can't remember her name. Let's start with Abby first of all. So, this character kind of caught me by surprise. The protagonist, the antagonist. There's a reason why I slept up there. I'm going to say something right now that is going to be disagreed with heavily, at least from a social media perspective. Not that anybody follows my social media, but I started the game obviously rooting for Elli. She's the protagonist. And when Joel bites the dust, and yes, that did shock me that they killed him off that early. Unlike a lot of people out there bitching and moaning about it, didn't bother me at all. That's drama. That's what makes a great movie. That's what makes a great book. And in this case, that's one of the things that makes a great story in a video game. Stop whining. Well, they killed off Joel to her. It's not Joel's story. It never has been. You know, he's there, but this is Ellie's story. I had no problem with them knocking Joe off, and the way they did it was so brutal and so unexpected. He didn't even have a chance to put up a fight, and I was like, wow, that was so heavy. And you knew right there, like, Ellie's not going to let this fly. This evil bitch, like, who the fuck? But as it's happening, it's already going through my head. I'm like, oh god, all right, you know, she knew somebody in that hospital when Joel, you know, went on his murderous rampage, because he killed a lot of people in that hospital with no discrimination as to who he was killing. He killed doctors, nurses. It was like Weapon X, except he was trying to go in instead of trying to escape. Those were her people, you know. There was her sister in there, or her dad, or her brother, or something. It turns out it was her father, who was the actual doctor who was going to perform the operation, who wasn't an evil guy either. They flash back to his scene where he's talking to what's her face from the Fireflies. I don't have all the names in front of me. We're going to do a podcast with my son on this, and you guys will get his perspective. But I'm just throwing some initial thoughts out there on this one. I'm not going to go too heavy into everything. It was just a really brief overview. So obviously Ellie goes on the hunt. Her girlfriend follows, eventually catches up with her, and which I have to admit is a little annoying. But I mean, she served a role in the story, and it to bring that emotion into it. You know, her being pregnant, and a little bit after the prologue, suddenly we're switched around. Now we're playing as Abby, this brute of a woman. I can address a few other things that people have been saying online about Abby's character. You know, in a post-apocalyptic society, a woman would never be able to maintain that kind of fitness, and it's just unrealistic. And I've seen all this stuff online, and it's like, sorry, you're wrong. I have a good friend of mine who's a power lifter and a rower. She's a big girl, probably about the same size as Abby would be in the show. So, to say that this is unrealistic in any way, is it an outlier? Yeah, there's not many girls that are built like that, but I think it lends a good element to the story, especially at the end when they get their face-to-face meetings, because you really got like the stealth and the sneakiness of Ellie against the brute force of Abby. I didn't want to play as Abby though. She's a bad guy. She's the antagonist, and then started playing a little bit more, and I'm like, shit, I think I've started to like this character. And then you just kept playing as Abby, like, for so long. You got into all the nuance of her life and why she did what she did, and the guilt that she feels. And I'm gonna tell you, by the time I got to the end of this game, I didn't give a shit about Ellie. I didn't. By the time I got to the end of this game, I didn't want her to win. When the controls switched over at the end to Ellie, and now you have to kill Abby. My son was playing it, but I didn't even want to touch the controller. I'm like, I can't stand Ellie now. Like, by the end of the game, I just loathed her. Abby is my favorite character in this game, hands down. Ellie is, if you look at it from an outside perspective, Ellie is the antagonist in this game. I mean, Abby killed Joel, yes. She went after Joel for revenge because of what happened to her father and all her friends. All the people she knew, at least, in that building. And she let Ellie live twice. The second time said, don't let me ever see you again. She let Ellie live twice. How many of Abby's friends and family did Ellie slaughter?
Quick, or I can make it so much worse.
Abby let her live twice. She killed her ex. She killed his pregnant wife. She tortured her friend. She gave her other friend a horrible death in the basement with all the spores. Ellie was ruthless in this. Once I started thinking about it again, it's like, okay, what Joel did was horrible. And Abby went and found her revenge, let everyone else live, took out the guy that she wanted to take out, and Ellie goes on this rampage across her. Even when she finds her, like, hanging from that pole from those slavers. Yeah, so that might come as a shock to some people. After playing through this entire game, The Last of Us Part 2, I no longer give a shit about Ellie. I was cheering when Abby broke her arm. I've heard a lot of fans on social media complaining about having to play as Abby. I heard this girl that actually plays Abby, the woman who plays her character in the video game, had death threats delivered to her. Death threats against her newborn baby. It's like, okay, come on, guys. Move out of your parents' basement. Get some therapy. It's a video game. Fucking loser. But anyway, by the time I got to the end of this game, Abby was easily my favorite character. I cannot wait to see how they portray, how they do this in season 2 of the show, how they break it up. I don't envy the writers of the TV show. I'll tell you that, because playing through this game, playing both sides, that's not going to translate exactly the same way on the screen. So I don't know how they're going to do it, but I hope they pull it off. Looking forward to season 2, definitely. And obviously there's going to be a part 3 of this game. Probably won't be for a few years. What do you guys think? Do you think that do you think they could team up even if they hate each other for some mutual goal? Is Ellie going to come back and try to kill her again? And if Ellie pulled that shit, if I were Abby, I'd just snap her neck. So yeah, let me know what you think. In about a week, there's going to be a much more nuanced deep dive. We're going to talk about the documentary about the making of the game and all that went into it, and all the voice actors who just did a phenomenal job bringing this story to life in a video game. It's just so phenomenal. Anyway, if you haven't played the game and you're still listening, despite what you've heard, I haven't told you shit about this game. You got to go play it. It's so fabulous. Stay tuned. Turn on the bell notification, because you'll get notified when we put that episode out about The Last of Us 2. Take care, everybody. May you always find water and shade.